It's time once again for another episode of the Franchise Business Radio Show. Broadcasting live from the Pro Business Channel studios in Atlanta. And now here's your host, Pam Currie.
Welcome to the Franchise Business Radio Show. We have an excellent show taking place today, and part of the reason why I'm exceptionally excited about this show is because who we have in the studio and what the purpose of the show is about. We have a couple of franchise professionals, industry experts that I'm going to be introducing you today. And we also have a second-time visitor. For those of you that listened before, we announced that there was a very unique program, or I should say an inaugural program that was being rolled out at Georgia State University, a franchise entrepreneurship program. And we have Mike-Wien back in the studio, and we're going to be talking about that. This really is a spotlight show to really hear, okay, well, that GSU Franchise Entrepreneurship Program was rolled out. Let's hear how it's going, and we'll hear from Mike, advisory boards, as well as a student today. So let's go ahead. Just want to go around the studio and introduce you to our guest. First, I would like to introduce you to Chris. Chris, would you mind giving us a couple sentences about yourself?
Sure. My name is Chris Dull, and I am the CEO of Global Franchise Group. We are an Atlanta-based franchisor over the brands of Great American Cookies, Marble Slab Creamery, Maggie Moo's, Pretzelmaker, and Hot Dog on a Stick. And we also own a cookie dough and pretzel flour manufacturing facility here in Atlanta as well.
I've got a sweet tooth. I'm really hungry now.
Yeah, we got you covered.
Great. Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You've got a lot of expertise and really looking into drilling down a little bit deeper and learning from you.
Great.
Thank you. Also on our show today, we have Mike-Wien, who my listeners have definitely had the opportunity to meet before. Welcome back, Mike.
It's great to be back, Pamela.
Well, great to have you. I'm excited to learn a little bit more about how the program has been going at GSU, especially since it was the inaugural. But before we do that, I'm just going to ask Rich, our producer here, tell us a little bit about Mike.
All right, Pam. And once again, you're listening to Franchise Business Radio, and very exciting to have Mike back in the studio. We were chatting before the show, and just to recap on your background and bio, you're an adjunct professor of marketing in the hospitality school at Georgia State University. You launched a new course, and actually that was last time you were kind of doing we got the scoop on that, right?
We were just trying to figure it out, and now we're just closing the semester.
Wow, time flies, right?
So now I can actually count myself as a professor in franchising.
Nice. Add that to your feather in your cap. And speaking of that, this course focuses on franchising, which is the first inaugural semester for the course. And you bring 35 years experience to the classroom, working in senior manager marketing roles at Frito-Lay. And I read your book, interesting Frito-Lay stories you shared in the book there.
Thank you. I hope you remembered the good ones, not the bad ones.
And remind me that the claim to fame was you were kind of the part of the there was a good launch of a product and a not so good launch, right?
Yes. I am the guy responsible for rolling Tostitos nationally.
And the sticks. There was a stick story.
But before I did that, I rolled out Fantastics. Fantastics was the biggest disaster in the history of Frito-Lay. Right. But it says a lot about the organization because they gave me another new product to roll out afterwards. They described it as Fantastics was a $29 million learning experience.
Whoa.
Yeah, I don't know if we can afford that here at the Pro Business Channel, but at that level, I mean, it's a whole different experience, right?
It's okay. Tostitos sells in excess of $1 billion a year now, so
that makes GSU tuition.
I think that they made up for the Fantastics disaster.
Yeah. So, beyond Frito-Lay, Pepsi, Omni Hotels, Citibank, and Deloitte. In addition to teaching, Mike works with small businesses on growth strategies, professional speaker, and competes in Ironman triathlons, which is kind of the theme of your book or throughout there. Tell us about the title of that book.
The title is the specific edge, and what it basically does is it uses my Ironman World Championship experience just as a metaphor to help people figure out how they can develop a competitive edge or a specific edge, a competitive advantage.
And again, I have my book at home and enjoyed reading that. And from what I recall is that a lot of trials and hits and misses with the triathlon experience. But you hold this, you were second in your class, right?
Thank you. In 2011, I was second in the World Championships in my age group.
That's crazy.
Going to Hawaii.
Wow.
And since I was a kid who, growing up, played right field, which is the worst kid on the team, that's a long way from right field.
I think that deserves a round of applause.
You're too kind.
All right. Meanwhile, back to our franchise business show already in progress. Pam, go ahead.
Oh, absolutely. Mike, welcome back. And just for our listeners, as you know, I'm also part of the advisory board, so it's been really fun to watch this whole thing unfold. But I think a good starting point is, what is this franchising class about?
Well, the franchising class is to give students an opportunity to see different ways that they could actually go into business ownership. You know, franchising is the number one route to business ownership out there. Mm-hmm. And it's also the number one route right now for people coming with, not the greatest education, not the greatest work experience, and living the American dream.
Absolutely.
And there's all kinds of examples of people who have just, worked hard and become very wealthy through the franchise system. We want to give that opportunity to our students. And what's amazing to me is that if you look across the country, there's plenty of business schools that have franchising as part of a class. There's plenty of law schools that also have franchising as a focus. But there's no major university that really focuses on franchising as exclusively. And it's drawn a lot of attention. We're having a good time.
I really believe that. And to your point, I think the younger generation is really moving into business ownership at a much more rapid pace than they ever did in the past. And franchising is such a great channel to go down, and education is an important aspect of that. So who is this class for? Who should be taking it?
The class is for students in the undergraduate program.
Okay.
And they're thinking about doing one of three things. The most common is that they are going to develop an idea, and they want to know, how they want to go into business.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they want to go into business, and they don't have the capital, they don't have the manuals, they need the experience, and they also can't borrow money.
Mm-hmm.
Going with a franchise will help them resolve all of those because it's easier to borrow money, they'll get the manual, they'll get the help, and they can go into business for themselves. So that's the first group. The second group is people who are going to be working for a franchisor, say in the marketing department. And the class will help them understand the relationship between the franchisee and the franchisor and just, give them that nice knowledge to make them more valuable for that position. The third, which is a little more rare, is someone has a great idea for a restaurant that they're going to open and then they eventually want to franchise it. But that's probably a little bit farther down the road. And, we've seen that happen of college kids coming up with great ideas and all of a sudden expanding it all over the country.
Absolutely. Jimmy John's, that's the example.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Student turned entrepreneur.
And I love when I hear and see those stories. And you know what else we're starting to see in the franchise community is quite a bit of partnering between parents and their children that are coming right out of college. Because to your point, funding could be a little bit difficult to get at a certain age, and the soon-to-be graduated college student, they've got the business savvy, the energy, the drive, the desire. But if they partner up with their parents, they can have that funding, and that's a great launching pad for many of them.
Sure, and to your point, Pamela, the students coming out today are millennials. They're a lot different than the students coming out when I graduated, which were the baby boomers. They're much more interested in taking risk. They want greater purpose in life. They want to have more control of their time. And there's an awful lot of them that are thinking very seriously about not going to work and getting the gold watch, but going to work for themselves.
Very well said. And another thing that I really like, and I'd like you to elaborate on this for our listeners, is when I went to college, not to date myself, but there really wasn't a whole lot of real-world experience in the classroom. It was very textbook-driven. So talk to us a little bit about that. How have you made this class, what I call real world, and brought real world into it and made it relevant, real?
Well, I think that that's one of the hallmarks of not only the way I teach, but the way we focus at Georgia State at the School of Hospitality. And that is that we want to bring real world to the students. We don't want to just have the academia and the textbooks. And so much of the learning is out of the classroom. There's a couple ways we do that. First of all, the students are working on 3 different projects during the class. The first one was to go out and interview a franchisee and find out what the positives are of a franchisee, like getting an getting an operating manual and getting marketing support and getting help, and what are the negatives. And some of the negatives are if they want to have barbecue on their menu and it's a hamburger place, they can't put barbecue on their menu.
That's right.
Or they, there's a fee that they have to pay, a percentage of sales every single month, and that's also a negative. And so they got that understanding. The second project is they went out and picked 3 franchises, evaluated them as far as a potential purchase, and then hypothetically purchased one and presented that to the class. And then the third project is, which they're working on now, is they're going to go out and find a franchisee and help and understand how they can develop a local marketing program for that franchisee that will complement what the franchisor is giving. Now, if that's not enough real world, we bring in franchise experts like you. Thank you very much for joining our class, and to help them evaluate franchises or understand what's going on or understand from the franchise perspective. And then we also have had 2 field trips. Our first field trip was earlier this year. We went to Arby's, and you take 18 people who are in the early 20s. We bring them into Arby's social media room, and you can imagine that there's a lot of excitement.
Oh, sure.
And then the last thing, which I'm sure Chris is going to talk about, is last night Chris hosted the class in his factory where they were making chocolate chip cookies. And, how could that be a miss with students?
Exactly.
They also ate everything that was provided.
They did a very good job of eating the cookies. That is for sure.
How did we miss out on that class? I never had that class.
I know. And, well, you know what? Obviously, he was very selective about who he brought on the advisory board.
Yeah.
The stomach's the way to the heart. Is that how it works?
You bet. But I'll tell you what. I was thinking about it driving home last night that I can't compete with, people like you and people like Chris that come into the classroom. As much as as hard as I try to bring real world, I can't compete with you guys who actually live in the real world. And I think that you'll find that the students are having just an incredible experience because of it.
Absolutely. If you were to tell me you're going to get to go on a couple field trips, have a couple different people come in and guest speak in class, and I'm not going to have the same person lecturing to me week after week, that is a dream class for me. I wish they had that when I was going through college. So tell us a little bit more about the advisory board. What is it that they do?
The advisory board we set up because there's no template. There's no, in fact, there's not even a textbook that's been written in the United States. The textbook I'm using is a book that was written in England, and we're using more of handouts than I am the textbook right now, frankly, and we're still wrestling with that. Mm-hmm. That's another reason why we don't focus too much on the textbook. But I lost what the question was.
Just the advisory board.
The advisory board,
itself,
that's right.
and what their involvement is, what they do.
We have representatives on the advisory board from franchisees, franchisors. We also have people like yourself that helps people select franchises, so there are consultants that are working. We also have the 2 lawyers. In fact, it's wonderful. They're competitive lawyers, and they come together. And we have someone who understands the financial side of it. They are there to help guide me in developing this class and focusing on what's important, where the focus should be, and also to provide great resources to the class. So they have been terrific in helping us launch this.
Is it fair to say that this program is an entrepreneurship program with a focus on franchising? Or, how did franchising, I guess, get included as part of the curriculum?
Yeah, franchising is the focus.
Okay.
The real question is franchising entrepreneurship? And there's some purists that think that franchising and getting the manual isn't quite entrepreneurship. And the other side of it is, you take a look at someone like Chris, who has now, pulled together 4 franchises and become famous for turning around franchises. I can't think of a greater entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And so there's no debate on the fact that this is the fastest route to business ownership. And I'm one who believes that many owners of franchises are very much entrepreneurs running their own business.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's the chicken and egg thing a little bit, right? Before you can franchise something, it has to be founded by a purist, a pure entrepreneur, because that business model has to be fine-tuned. All the trials and tribulations have to be done, because that's what future franchisees are licensing. Is that proven business model? So yeah, what comes first? So there is sort of a hybrid there, and you probably have heard the term frantrepreneur, which I'm pretty confident isn't in our Webster dictionary. But you never know. But no, that was an interesting discussion around.
Yeah, and it's not the Webster dictionary anymore. Does Google recognize it or not as a word?
Touche. Well, thank you so much. I'm really happy to have you on the show again, and really just honestly, I'm just so excited about this program. When I first heard about it, with my passion for franchising and education, it just lit me up. It really, really did.
Thank you. And I'm excited about the response we're getting from the students, which you got to see when you were in our class a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
Just the enthusiasm for the subject and for the special speakers like yourself that come into class.
Absolutely. I'd like to, we've been talking about this gentleman sitting next to you, Chris, who obviously is also on the advisory board and has a lot of deep and rich industry experience. It sounds from a lot of perspectives. Mm-hmm. Rich, would you mind sharing who is this gentleman wearing the Falcons?
Rise up.
Yes, not just it's actually the Owners Club. Wow, that's an upgrade from my T-shirt.
Pretty good seats. There's pretty good seats in the Owners Club.
I would think so. All right, if we play our cards right, maybe we can get in the Owners Club seats. Let's take one step at a time. So Christopher Dull currently serves as president and CEO for GFG, responsible for the strategic development and expansion of 4 quick service restaurants, QSR, known in the industry. Brands include Great American Cookies, which we were just talking about, and you do have something in your truck, you said, right?
That's right. I got a cookie cake. Once we're done here, I'm bringing it up.
So we have to earn this, yeah.
That's
Party
right.
in the studio,
which is much better. We just did food and beverage radio, and no food they brought in, so
that's just not right.
We're on the same page, brother. All right, so. Also, in addition to Great American Cookies, Marble Slab Creamery, Pretzelmaker, and Hot Dog on a Stick. Wow, all brands that we all know and love and have experienced, I'm sure. Speaking of experience, your experience in franchise management is diverse, including years of successful leadership in real estate development and development operations and business administration. Mr. Dull recently held the position of president of Nexen.
Mm-hmm.
Franchise management, responsible for the day-to-day operations of 7 franchise brands until its acquisition by Global Franchise Group in 2010. You began your career in franchise management with the Marble Slab Creamery brand nearly 15 years ago. When did they?
20.
You need an update.
I need to update that. I'm now going on 20 years.
Wow. Yep. And is that when they originally launched, or when
did
you come on board?
At that time, the brand was about 10 years old.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And during your tenure, you gained an acute perspective on franchise operations and management by working with both at the corporate level as well as in-store, quickly rising to the position of Executive Vice President. So welcome to Franchise Business Radio.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, definitely welcome, Chris. A lot to learn from you. So we're going to try to do it in, how about 10, 15 minutes?
Let's
how
do
about
it.
that?
Let's do it. It's like speed dating.
Exactly. That's the way it is today. Well, first and foremost, let's talk about why franchising.
Sure. Franchising is, and I think Mike touched on it well, it requires an entrepreneurial spirit, but it's a path that's proven. where you have some protection and some comfort of knowing that others have gone before you and that it's tried and it's true. And so you can take your willingness and desire to be on your own, but not be on your own.
Sure. In business for yourself, but not by yourself.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. And just since it's a topic that we brought up, I'd be curious to, kind of get your opinion around that. Do you think that if it's a younger, emerging franchise system versus a very mature franchise system, that it attracts a different profile of franchisee?
I think that's true. The thing that stands out to me is why would an individual get into a franchise business? At the root of it, it's to make money, right?
Sure.
And so sometimes prospects get caught up in the sizzle of a new concept when the most important thing is, A, can I make money doing this? And B, is it something that I would enjoy doing?
Good point.
So, our brands are all established and have been around for years and years. Hot Dog on a Stick has been around since 1946. And these are businesses that make money. And so at the end of the day, if prospects are looking to get into a business where they're going to generate an income and work in a fun environment, our brands speak well to that. But sometimes they get caught up in the sizzle of other concepts that aren't as quite profitable.
It makes perfect sense. And that's why it's so important in doing your due diligence. Make sure you understand that financial model that's in place. So what makes a franchise good or bad?
Sure. At the end of the day, it's got to make money. Mm-hmm. And I think that the best source of information as to whether or not a franchise system is working or isn't working are the franchisees themselves. And so prospects who take the time to really dig in and in their diligence process genuinely get to know some folks who are operating stores, they're going to be able to tell you what it's like to live a day in the life. And they're the ones who are going to be able to tell you that this is something that is financially appealing or not. And so I think that that's really in the process of investigating a franchise system, really digging into the existing base.
So that kind of leads into another thought. When you're vetting out different franchise opportunities, one very important step, like you just said, is getting to know the franchisees, validating with them. What other advice would you give to those considering franchise ownership?
So all franchisors are required to prepare a franchise disclosure document. And the disclosure document does a great job, or should do a great job, of explaining the franchise opportunity. And furthermore, this is about generating profits. And in each franchise document, disclosure document, you will have an earnings claim or a financial performance rep. Mm-hmm. And the more detailed that rep is, the better understanding you have of what type of income you can generate. Franchisors who steer away from providing detailed information, there's typically a reason they steer away from that. Mm-hmm. So when you're looking at your franchise disclosure document, make sure that you dig deeply into the financials and understand what it is you can do to generate an income.
Makes perfect sense. Another item that I always recommend, obviously the entire FDD is highly important for review, but I think the item 20, which really gives you a snapshot, that 3-year snapshot of whether or not you're seeing a system grow or downsize.
Absolutely.
Any thoughts around that?
Yeah. You definitely want to be a part of something that's growing and healthy. And to that point, in all franchise documents, you have a list of franchisees that have left the system. So as important as it is to talk to folks who are currently in the business, it's equally important to talk to folks who are recently exiting the business. They may have exited because they sold their business for a profit. They may exit because they were financially unsuccessful. And so it's important to know that on the front end.
Wow, really great point there. Excellent. So I've gone through this due diligence. I have selected a franchise. I've signed off on that franchise agreement. So what are the keys to becoming successful as a franchisee?
Yeah, this is great. And last night in the class, we talked a little bit about this. Execution at the store level and being involved in your community, regardless of whatever brand or business you are in, is paramount. Just because you're part of a big brand doesn't mean that people are going to come flocking through your doors.
So that field of dreams, you build it and they'll come. That's no.
It does happen. It does happen. But the better you are at pulling your customers in and creating connectivity to your community, that's really what's going to drive your success. And when we look at our franchise systems, and we have over 1,100 locations throughout the world, you can take the top 10 of any of our brands, and all of them are well ingrained in their local communities around their stores.
Good point. And that's sort of that, what I call the ABC, going above and beyond the call of duty.
Absolutely.
That makes sense. So what about the flip side of that? What causes franchises to fail?
I would say that when you look at franchise performance and those who don't perform well, it's the ones who open doors and for one reason or another are not seeing the type of traffic that they want or getting the type of response that they expect in their respective business. And instead of talking about what they can do and going and doing what they can do, they spend a lot of time talking about why it's not happening, focusing more on the hurdle and not on the other side. So the franchisees that sit back and let a bad situation be bad and live in that place are the ones that struggle in taking their businesses forward. And many times we've seen businesses that have opened and not performed where we wanted them to. Franchisee who's unhappy has exited. Energetic franchisee comes in and buys the business and does tremendously well with it because they are willing to ABC.
Yes. Yeah, no, I understand. I very often share with people, I say, you can have two franchisees sitting in equal market opportunities, but you'll have one that's just excelling and the other one that's just doing fine or is just flat. And it does go back to that, bringing that individual energy to it.
Absolutely. And, a franchisor that's worth their salt, they're going to have programs to help franchisees that are struggling. Mm-hmm. And so in the diligence process, you should try to identify some people who are struggling, who have struggled, and what has your franchisor done? What have they provided you to help you get out and generate sales?
Really great point. It's interesting to me because very often I think someone thinks if they become a franchisee, they assume they're automatically going to be successful, and there's a real myth around that. To your point, the franchises do fail, they do struggle, and when that's happening, how do you manage to it? Right.
That's right.
So you are on the Georgia State University Advisory Board.
I am.
For this franchise entrepreneurship program that was just rolled out. What was your involvement?
So I met Mike through a mutual friend. I too am an Ironman athlete, but not nearly to the level of this guy sitting next to me.
You're not as crazy as I am. I think what you're trying to say politely.
Maybe so. No, you're a fantastic athlete. But so I knew we had a friend, and Mike knew that I was in the franchise space, and we had lunch and talked about it. And I thought it was just a great opportunity for the youth at GSU to really get an opportunity to see an entire industry that doesn't get a lot of discussion. As a college student exiting, franchise to me was, McDonald's.
Right.
There just wasn't a lot of light shined on that industry, and there is tremendous opportunity in the franchising world. And so I thought it was great that there was a program that would help kids see that.
And it's my understanding that you had a field trip yesterday. Tell us a little bit about that.
We did. It was awesome. So we had 17, 18 students out to the manufacturing facility, and they got to see how we manufacture the cookie doughs with all of our little cookie-making elves down there, and also our pretzel flour and how we handle distribution. And then we brought them up into a classroom setting and presented our brands and talked about what we at GFG excel at, and then took a step down as to how you take a business that is struggling and how do you bring some new life to it. And after that, we got to eat some cookies and try some product, and I think everyone left there full and happy.
And I know we do have a student that is calling in, an actual student from the class who's planning to call in. Before we bring him online, assuming we're able to get connected with him here, but before we do that, you made me think of something in regards to struggling franchisors. It's my understanding that your background is really to consult specific franchisors who have hit that rough spot.
Yeah, more so than consult, we acquire.
Okay.
Yeah,
all
so
right.
we like to buy. We believe that we have very good systems in place at GFG, and so we've taken brands that have fallen on hard times and lifted them significantly. And so in the space, there are businesses that you've got an individual who had that entrepreneurial spirit, who's gone out and started something, and they have a great concept, but they haven't evolved into a great franchisor. And so we like to look at those opportunities, acquire those businesses, bring them into our umbrella, and give that brand the love and attention that we've been effective at giving the ones that we have today.
So there's really kind of two areas of expertise, if you think about it, from a franchisor perspective. One key area of expertise is that industry knowledge of that business model, that business.
Yes.
And that's that pure entrepreneur that then takes it, wants to package it, wants to grow through a franchising strategy. However, there's another area of expertise, which is really understanding that franchise model.
Yes.
And having that expertise in place.
Absolutely.
That makes perfect sense. I'm just going to turn to, do we have anyone dialing in with us? Was he able to get connected, Rich?
We should be on in just a moment here.
This particular student, he is actually graduating in December. And I'm really looking forward to just getting his thoughts and opinions of what it was like to actually be a student in Mike's class. And what's really exciting about how this has touched him is he has been so inspired around the franchise industry. He actually has an interest in pursuing that once he graduates from college. So actually talking to him about doing some intern things. And Chris, you might be able to give him a little bit of guidance and direction as well.
Absolutely.
Not so much here in the studio.
We'll be on in just a moment with our student calling in. Just want to remind our listeners you're listening to Franchise Business Radio. And Pam, you are also on the advisory board as well, as I understand.
Yes,
right?
I definitely, thanks for the invitation from Mike. I was also on the advisory board. And
it's not past tense. You still are. We're not letting you off.
Not off the hook yet. Nice try, Pam. Yeah.
And I do not want to leave. I'm very passionate. I'm very passionate about what we're doing here. And I was actually sharing with Rich earlier that I actually held a workshop or facilitated a workshop for high school teachers for a new track that they are starting to roll out. So I feel like it's really starting to evolve, and there's a strong interest around rolling out these entrepreneurship franchise programs. But to your point, the curriculum isn't out there. So the fact that it's being designed right now and there's stuff that is taking place to bring it into our educational institutions on a high school level as well as a college level is just wonderful.
Yeah, I to that point though, if we are attracting students for an entrepreneurial program that is you sort of develop it as you go, I think they're attracted to this type of class where I'm literally making it up as I go too, and I think they really appreciate that, and that's part of the entrepreneurial spirit. I think they're enjoying the learning by observing as opposed to learning by reading.
Yeah. And Rich had asked me about my involvement. I was able to be a guest speaker in one of your classes. And to that point, the enthusiasm, the questions, just the desire to understand. And even after the class, the follow-up emails that I received, the desire to get connected via LinkedIn, the desire for internships. It just goes to show you this isn't just a class that's being taken to check the box. It's a class because there is sincere interest, and they're seeing this as, I don't want to say a career path, because an entrepreneur path is really what it is.
Sure. But, your timing was just perfect. They were working on an assignment of evaluating different franchises. And you may want to share how that fit perfectly into what you do with people who are looking at franchises.
Yeah, absolutely. When I'm working with someone who is considering franchise ownership, one important thing to come in and do is just really do an analysis. And, I really try to identify what that personal and professional profile of that individual is about. I kind of have created some models that really guide that process, such as there is a profile that I've created. It's a 4-quadrant profile. It gets into, what are our emotional ambitions and motivators? What are the professional motivators, business criteria that we're really looking for in a business? Chris, you had mentioned earlier, does it make financial sense? Mm-hmm. And are you going to enjoy it, right? A third part of that quadrant is the financial profile. Any business you get into requires an investment. So are you in a position to move into that particular business? Do you have the financial capability? And there's a lot of funding assistance that is out there. So if there's funding assistance needed, obviously can help out in that area. And then the third area, I call it partnership, or the fourth area, I call it partnership qualifiers. And are you willing? Are you able? And is the timeline appropriate? So that's sort of that initial profile. From there, once we have identified all of that, it then allows us to go into and really start researching businesses. And again, just taking my background not only in franchising, but being in the education world, I really believe in helping put together models to streamline these processes. So I actually created what is called a research pyramid, and really building the foundation of what it is we are looking for in a business. You kind of have that original foundation of what's your investment level, is there a specific industry that you might be interested in, is there a territory available for you? Does it match what kind of ownership you want to have, single, multi-unit ownership? So that's that initial foundation, that first screening out. And then we go to that second level and go, okay, is it really matching the criteria? Are you comfortable managing employees? Do you like the idea of inventory? What are your lifestyle ambitions? So, really kind of building through these layers to identify, is this the right business for you? Because ultimately, it kind of gets to the peak of that pyramid of the another radio, WIIFM. What's in it for me? What are the benefits? What are the value points of what's going to be in it for me if I were to move down this path of actually being a franchisee? So hopefully that helped the students with their upcoming project, when is the presentation?
Well, they've made that presentation.
They did.
Yes, the next round of presentations will be on the localized marketing plans.
Wonderful. Well, I hope those tools and those models really kind of help guide those efforts.
Yeah, and one of the key things that I've learned by hanging around with people like you and Chris is that it really is, and the students, it's really effectively communicated, is that it's a two-way street. That the franchisor really wants to make sure that this person's going to be successful and has the ability and the passion, and it fits with what they want. And the franchisee needs to also make sure that they're not just buying a job, but they're buying into something that they'd be really passionate about and can be very successful at.
Yeah, and that's another layer in the pyramid. Does it align with your skills and your interests and areas that you're going to have confidence in? Because we don't want to put you in a hardcore driven sales franchise if really that's not where your confidence lies, that's not where your strengths lie. There's got to be alignment in all of those areas. Great.
Yeah, we've definitely had, we recently had a franchisee who was a prospect who was passionate about baking, just loved baking and thought that Great American Cookies would be a great fit for her. And when we dug in, how do you relate with teens, tweens, and her position was, I really don't want to have anything to do with kids. I'm not a kid person. I said that's a bit of a problem because that is your workforce.
Yes.
So while you love baking, your job as franchisee is going to go far beyond just baking delicious cookies. Mm-hmm. And so very quickly we could see that this was probably not a good fit.
Yeah. If you've ever read the book E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, it's sort of funny you should bring up the baking because that's the that's the storyline.
The story. She was baking pies.
Right, exactly. That's the storyline. And there's a lot more to a business than baking cookies.
Products, yes.
Products, absolutely.
Well, this is a good lead. If I could throw one to Chris,
Please.
And that is, it's a lot more than baking products. When we were there, Chris shared his vision for all of his brands, and I think that really drives it home. They're not just baking cookies, and I think it would be great if you'd share that with the listeners.
Sure. So, our vision at GFG is to connect people through craveable products and memorable experiences. So, we're selling ice cream and cookies and pretzels and things that are an indulgence. And by themselves, they're great. But when you can add the value of creating a very memorable experience, a celebration, if you will. When did you get your first cookie cake? I can remember my first cookie cake. I can remember my first trip to Slab Creamery and creating my very own ice cream with my 15-year-old girlfriend. So it's about having great products. It's important.
Sure.
But most important is the connectivity between great products and memorable experiences that keep your customers coming back.
I like that, yeah. I mean, because there could be a lot of cookies out there, but
That's
it's
right.
the experience and making it memorable that makes
That's
the
right.
difference. That's the differentiator. Wonderful. I believe, do we have someone online?
Yeah, we have Brandon. We're going to put him on speakerphone here, so stand by. So go ahead, Brandon.
Hi, Brandon. Are you able to hear me out there?
Can you, Brandon, you there?
Yes.
Okay.
Brandon, so happy you're able to call in. In the studio, we have Professor Mike here and also Chris, who you met yesterday when you went on the field trip. And we've just been talking about how excited we are about this GSU program, but we really want to get the perspective from a student. And I guess a good starting point, if you can hear this okay, is this, out of curiosity, why did you sign up for this class?
Well, this is my last semester, and I needed an extra elective, and everything else seemed kind of dull. It didn't pique my interest, but as soon as I saw franchising, I was like, that's completely different. I've never seen that before, and I thought I'd want to give it a try.
So you obviously were a pioneer in the class. Now, this is the inaugural semester for the rollout of this program. So what's it like being a pioneer?
It's been fun. I mean, they're still great, but that isn't really the main focus of the class. It's really about what the students have brought to it and what we take away from these new experiences. I mean, it's an amazing class, and it's a good feeling to know that we helped to shape its future.
Oh, I like that. So in just working with Professor Wien, what did you think about the real world experiences that were brought into the class?
I thought they were great. I mean, I really haven't had a class like it before. I mean, he's brought in industry experts to talk to us about franchising, and we've been encouraged to go out and speak to franchisees and franchisors. And we've even visited Arby's Corporate, the global franchising group, and even got a chance to visit the Franchise Expo.
Absolutely. Well, so not to put anybody on the spot here, but did you have a favorite class?
Well, I've always been a big fan of Arby's, so that was definitely my favorite class right there. It was great to see where everything happened and gain knowledge from the people there.
So, a lot of the real world experience did come from the advisory board and their involvement in the classroom. I guess if you were to give your insight and input for future classes, what would you recommend as far as the role of the advisory board play out in the classroom? Did you like what was done? Any ideas, suggestions?
Really, I think there needs to be, they've done a great job in inviting the students out and allowing us to go to lunches and breakfasts with other franchisors. And I think that would be great to have more opportunities to do stuff like that. It's the field trips that we go on that really makes a difference and really helps us learn because of the fact that it's different from every other class.
Yeah. Yeah, but thank you. That makes perfect sense. We were just talking about the ability to connect and really not just have a textbook education, but actually have a real world experience and use that as the education approach. So, and it's my understanding that you're going to be graduating in December and that you have an interest in franchising. How has this class helped formulate that for you? How's this class been a launching pad for you to move forward into the business world?
I mean, honestly, whenever somebody asked me about what I wanted to do with my future, I wouldn't really know what to say. But after taking this class and being able to speak to all these different people, I can confidently say that I want to be a franchisee in my future. I know I've got a paid internship now at Franchise Intellect, thanks to you. And it's great. I mean, I've got my foot in the door now, and all I'm going to do is try my best and try to work my way up.
Absolutely.
You know, we have Chris Dahl here, who's the CEO that you met last night. I'm just curious, are you interested in cookies or ice cream or hot dogs on a stick?
Can you say that again?
I was saying that we have Chris in the studio, Dahl, who is the CEO who you met last night. And I was curious to know if you were interested in hot dogs on a stick or chocolate chip cookies or, maybe pretzels or ice cream.
I mean, it would be great to eventually become one of those franchises. I would have to do more research.
Oh, good answer.
Good answer.
I mean, looking at them just on a basic level, they do interest me, but like I said, I'd have to do more research because I don't want to sit there and jump too soon into something that I don't understand.
I guess you've been listening to some of our speakers about due diligence, so that's a great answer.
Excellent. Brandyn, I know that you are in the middle of a work day here as well. So I really appreciate you calling in to the studio and giving us your perspective as a student for the inaugural GSU Franchise Entrepreneurship Program. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate your feedback.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll talk to you later. Great. Well, I just think this gives us a really well-rounded perspective on the program itself. From a professor perspective, a lot of deep franchise industry advisory board perspective, as well as a student perspective. And I mean, before just kind of in wrapping up, Mike, what does the future have to hold?
Well, we've already been approved for a class this spring.
Wonderful.
So our dean is very supportive of what we're doing. And, I mean, there's just a tremendous amount of excitement. The International Franchise Association is also excited and has been tracking me and has invited me to be one of the speakers at their International Franchise Convention in San Antonio in February. Mm-hmm. So we're certainly excited about that. And, there's a lot of things going on in the franchising world in Washington, which may have impact on, attaining this American dream, and we're becoming active with the Franchise Association in moving forward some of those ideas. So there's a lot of things that are happening. I think the community is really excited about the fact that we have a class that focuses on that.
Definitely. Well, I want to just say thanks to everyone. Thank you so much for your insight, input, passion around the future for franchising and the next generation that's coming up. And obviously, this is Pamela Currie. Rich, do you have anything else you would like to add?
Well, I'm hungry. I don't know if that hearing all this food and seeing the website here.
Yeah, you're hungry, and you've been showing us pictures, beauty shots of the various ice creams and cookies throughout the program.
Exactly. We had those
which,
up on our
fortunately,
monitor.
the radio audience can't see, but you've made me very hungry, too.
So yeah, we do want to finish maybe with just a brief conversation with our host, Pam Currie, and for those folks who'll be listening live on our live broadcast on the Pro Business Channel, as well as many more listeners over time, because it's evergreen on our podcast and all of our other platforms. We're syndicated on many channels: iTunes, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Facebook, Twitter. Actually, we're broadcasting live right now on Twitter as well as on Facebook. You don't even have to go to our channels. Just have a Facebook account, and we're broadcasting live. But having said all that, so for the folks that have been tuning in, listening to this engaging conversation, and have some interest in from the college level course to maybe dipping their toe in the franchise world.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about yourself and kind of your area of expertise. You're 20 years now in the franchising and traditional corporate America. Mm-hmm. All right. You acquired your business acumen from multiple perspectives of the franchise business model, but you're also obviously a consultant, and you also do training programs. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, first, I've got to pick on Chris a little bit.
All right.
He said 15. He said, well, no, actually, that's 20 now. And I'm probably more at the 25 mark. But I just like to use the plus. I like to use the plus sign. I think that's the better route to go. But yes, a little bit about my practice is, first and foremost, work with individuals who are considering franchise selection, as we've talked about, and really guiding them down that path of potential franchise business ownership. But another key component of my consulting practice is being a training strategist and working with the franchise community on different levels, and what is their training and support programs, because that is such an important pillar as a franchisor. So are we putting some good programs in place to really help ensure the success of our franchisees? And part of the reason for this show, too.
Yeah, because Chris, I think, was kind of touching on that earlier in the show about if you have a franchisor that is just kind of flatlining a little bit, it is a responsibility for, or the franchisee, franchisor to kind of step in and offer those training and support systems, right?
Definitely. Absolutely.
So now talk to us. We were talking on the phone the other day, and I think the average civilian may not realize that even a franchise consultant is available, because you think, I remember back in the day, I've owned a franchise in the past, had an entertainment company out in California, but when I went into franchise, it was just like stumbled across something. You pick up used to go to the bookstore and pick up the franchise directory, and you just flip through hundreds and hundreds of pages.
Yes, it
right?
amazes me. Yeah, we are still a well-kept secret.
Yeah.
I think many people who are considering franchise ownership, they don't know where to start. Obviously, there are so many different industry categories out there, over 3,000 business concepts. It can be highly overwhelming for anyone who's listening. I always refer to the internet as the wild, wild west, really. And so www is wild, wild west to me. So with that being said, it can be very overwhelming. And there are many folks that are not aware of our services, the fact that they're complimentary, and we can really help them navigate those waters and put a rudder.
Well, let's give your website and point of contact and a couple of other follow-up questions before we wrap up the show. But how would folks reach out to you?
Yeah, anyone who is interested in a little bit of guidance around franchising can contact me at pam@franchiseintellect.com or 847-970-8765. To get to my website, simply type in www.fran, F-R-A-N, intellect, INTELLECT.com. So www.franintellect.com, and that will get you to me. Thank you, Rich. I appreciate that.
And for those folks having a challenge spelling intellect, you can just go to franchisebusinessradio.com. Yeah, all the information is there as well. Mike's grimacing there a little bit, yeah. But so finally, talk to us about again, your services are you're kind of like a broker, right?
Yep, that's exactly right. A conduit, a business matchmaker.
So there's really no fee on your end for someone to considering getting into the franchise business. Sit down, have coffee, have a meeting with you, conversation over the phone if they're out of state, or online communication, and you'll kind of. What's that process look like? You'll kind of walk them through what's their lifestyle, what they're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, just real simply, if anyone is seriously considering franchise ownership, if they just reach out to me, the process is pretty straightforward in regards to just going in, doing an analysis, then allowing me to research different businesses for you. Once we find a business that the individual may want to consider, just guiding them through that due diligence like we've been talking about, which is so important to really do their homework, really do their due diligence. But sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So really to have someone guide you through that process will just make you more effective in that due diligence and put you in a position of making an informed and educated decision.
And no fees on your end, basically. You do all that work, and then but you're paid by the franchise.
I am. It's a perfect business model for all of the parties. I'm compensated by the franchisor. Obviously, this works really well for everybody. The franchisor doesn't have to have so many in-house salespeople, so it keeps their overhead low. It works for the individual who's considering franchise ownership because the services are complimentary, and naturally works for me because I'm still getting compensated.
And so you kind of do the vetting process, sir.
And you're also surfacing up qualified franchisees,
Sure.
which the franchisors probably
Franchisors love it. It gives the franchisor a candidate who's better informed and is vetted.
Yeah.
So you have someone who's qualified and understands what your business model is all about.
Yeah, kind of done that homework for you on your behalf and kind of become pre-qualified in a sense, and that you know that when they sit down they want to talk pretzels, they're not thinking car washes.
That's right.
Yeah.
I love your analogies.
So we are out of time now for another episode of Franchise Business Radio. Right, we'll see you next time.
Yes, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you again for joining Pam Currie and her guests on the Pro Business Channel. Use the social media links here to share today's show and stay tuned for the next episode of the Franchise Business Radio Show.